Welcome to Lock It Down Sports. I'm your host, Locke Hoover. As always, you can follow me on X at Lock It Up Media. That's Lock It Up Media on X. You can also check us out at E5280 Sports. E5280 Sports. And today on the show, what's the cost of doing business? Why this quarterback was really not talked about? How much money would it take in a sticky situation in Boston? And I want to start today's show with an article last week, or maybe it was earlier this week. I don't know. They all run together about college football NIL money and the cost of the roster, and what a championship level college football roster is going to look like nowadays. As Ohio State spent about $20 million in NIL last year and won it. Well, Texas has now said it's going to spend about $35 to $40 million this year on the 2025 roster. And I read that, I was like, wow, that's a lot. But the way things are going, it's like, yeah, I can see that, and I get where it's going. I mean, crazy enough, it seems like about the going rate of the rosters is 25 to 40 million. And obviously, that's a big gap, the 25 to 40 million, depending on the team. I mean, look at it. Texas didn't even win it last year. Neither did Oregon, and Oregon's NIL was reported around 23 million. So say this 35 to $40 million roster, and where this money's going and the breakdown of it, it's getting kind of wild and kind of crazy. With this money distribution too, I think it's going to be interesting to see what the House settlement with the NCAA happens. It's been reported that the breakdown is going to be about 75% of the assigned distribution will be to football. So that's around 15 million to the football players. Now, schools will have the freedom to distribute how much money they want to different teams. So that can be tricky if you have a good athletic program overall. I mean, of course, you want your football and your basketball to succeed, because obviously the breadwinners and the athletic programs, crown jewels, with obviously football being the number one overall crown jewel. When it comes to distribution, if I'm understanding this correctly, I think it's going to be easier some athletic programs than others. Let's just say Georgia, for example. They're good at one thing. We know what that is. There's no hiding it, obviously. They had a surprise run in basketball this year where they made it to the tournament for the first time since, 10, 12 years, something like that. It's been a long time because Georgia's basketball program has been really bad, which is hard to fathom with all the talent in Georgia, but that's neither here nor there. When it comes to distributing the money, yes, they got a good baseball program. They've traditionally in the past had a good baseball program, and they've got a really good one this year, top 10 school. But even then, a lot of your money's not going to the baseball program. Obviously, it's going to football. So I think the tough, tricky decision comes with these balanced programs. Let's just say like Tennessee, for example. National championship baseball program last year. College football playoff team this year. Your basketball teammate is making it to consistently Sweet 16s, Elite Eights, that level program, trying to get over the hump to get into the Final Four. How do you distribute that money there? Then they've got a good softball team, etc. Programs like that, universities like that, how do you distribute? Same thing with Alabama. Obviously, football, they got basketball, they got a good baseball team too. How is that money distributed and evened out? I mean, I don't think it's not going to. It won't surprise me. It won't surprise anybody. I mean, more of the money's still going to be poured into football, but say some teams pour $1 million, $2 million, $3 million more, as another school gives some to basketball, some to baseball. I mean, that say $1 to $3 million could be the difference in 1 to 2 to 3 players, big time playmakers out of the portal that can put you over the top as a football program to win a national championship. And that matters. That's a big difference. Now, of course, the distribution and the spread's completely different from, say, a Ohio State and an Indiana, or a Florida and a Vanderbilt. That gap's even wider. It's completely different. But I'm talking about your championship level type programs that are in the conversation, or just on the outskirts, kind of in the conversation to win a title. And that's a lot. That's a lot of money distribution and spread out. And it's going to be something to watch to see how it's distributed and that for. So more NIL stories to come. And it's all over the place and it's wild. Now, something that also was kind of wild and interesting, that no media member, there wasn't this big hoorah, hoo-hoo, craziness, hype, and fall of Quinn Ewers like there was Shedeur Sanders. Maybe it was because his dad wasn't named Dion. But where was the buzz? Where was this outrage, you could say, about Quinn Ewers falling to the 7th round? How come there was no over-the-top quotes or tweets or statements on TV, whatever the case might be, for Quinn Ewers, huh? Now, there's a report, this is from his agent, said teams did not want to draft him late due to him being a high-profile quarterback and made a lot of NIL money in college. Was saying teams thought he'd be a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, maybe 5th round draft pick. Obviously went in the 7th round. Didn't think he'd be good holding a clipboard. Didn't think he'd be a good backup because of his high profile nature of who he was in college and what he did in college on the field. He wasn't like Shedeur Sanders. He threw at everything, the combine, senior day, pro day, all that. Went through the interviews, prepared. Led the SEC on field production and touchdown passes last year. Took Texas, to the playoff, to the semis. So there is some scratching head confusion for sure. I'm gonna say the same thing like I said with Shedeur Sanders. I think all this is just wild. But you get drafted where you think your talent is. where it's reflected. Some handle it better. And there's different expectations going to the draft. But I don't think he was a 7th round pick. Talent-wise, I don't think Shedeur was a 5th round pick. But like I said, I think some of that was his fault, why he dropped. Quinn Ewers, on the other hand, a little bit different. I think the other odd thing about this is if teams really think he was a mid-round draft pick based on, what he did, his production, what they project him to be, why did he fall so much? Because obviously he can't go back to college. He's declared for the draft. He can't go back to college. So he's in the draft. How you rate him, how you grade him out to, that's a different thing. So there might be a little bit of truth to this. I think there's some truth to both ends. Was he a first, second round pick? No, probably not. Was he 7th round pick? Should he have been 7th round pick? No. I think some of us were not getting the full story from both the teams and the agent. I mean, you've seen all kinds of stories out recently about Sanders and his prep and his draft preparation and how he handled himself, how he carried himself with the interview process. I mean, you didn't hear any of that from Quinn Ewers. And then we hear this about coming out why he did 7th round pick from his agent and what he's been told by teams. A little head scratching on both ends. And I wish we would get the full story, but I don't think we really are. Now, I don't know if you saw this earlier, but there could be money for another game. Money for another game. And what I mean by that is the SEC. ESPN has reportedly offered the ESPN were offering the SEC 50 to 80 million annually if they added a 9th conference game. They make $11 million per year already for their ESPN deal. And it's interesting conversation with the way NIL is, of course, continuing to grow and using that money to get players, to get your roster. I don't think the SEC needs to do it, though. I don't think they need to add a 9th conference game. Here's why. So teams receive $4 million if they make the playoffs, $4 million in the quarterfinals, $6 million for the semifinals, $6 million for the title game. So minimum, let's say, I know only 2 made it this year, obviously. Excuse me, not 3 made it. 3 teams, I'm sorry. Tennessee, Georgia, and Texas. But let's say minimum 4 teams make it to the playoffs. That's $16 million total for those schools just making the playoffs. If they advance, who knows, right? But let's just say bare minimum $16 million for pick 4 schools. Whoever those 4 schools are. If you took the $80 million number and divided it by the 14 teams, that gets you to little over $5.7 million per school. Does a Tennessee, Alabama, Florida, LSU, Texas, etc. want to share that money with the Vanderbilt, with the Mississippi State? I don't think so. It's like, look, you're already in this conference. Because of basically us and what we do on the field, you're getting this amount of money. I mean, for years we've seen teams set up big non-conference game one-offs at off-site or neutral site games, and they split the money. Whatever their one-off deal is, whether that's at Mercedes-Benz or we've seen them in Orlando, we've seen them in Dallas. I mean, we've seen them out in LA. We've seen them all over with these schools doing these one-off games. Chick-fil-A kickoff, and Mercedes-Benz. The Dallas, I don't know what the one they called in Dallas when Alabama played out there. I think LSU's played out there as well. But these one-off, big-time non-conference games where they split the money. I mean, you get your teams once again, your Tennessees, your Alabamas, your LSU's, your Floridas, your Georgias are getting that money. They're getting that one-off game money. I mean, you watched the committee last year. You watched their questionable decision-making each and every ranking and how they rated teams, how they judged teams. I mean, the toughness of schedule didn't matter. It was a win-loss record, regardless of who you played. In my opinion, I think adding an SEC game, based on what we saw last year, would hurt an SEC team, more than it helps them. Because if a 10-2 SEC team ends the season like that, I'd say there's a 99% chance they're getting in almost every season. 10-2, it's a lot, pretty much. Yes, by 10-2, I mean it's if you're Tennessee, you lose to Georgia, Alabama, Florida. If those are your two losses, and those teams are decent or good, you're fine. Now, if you lose to Kentucky and Vanderbilt, yeah, there's some conversation of maybe not, but 99% of the time, you're 10-2 with the SEC, even Big Ten, which they play a nine game conference schedule. But why add the additional risk of hurting yourself getting into a playoff game and potentially affecting a school that might be on the bubble, adding a Georgia on their schedule, adding an Alabama, adding an LSU, a Texas, etc. That hurts you more than it helps you all the way around. So they don't need it. They make plenty of money elsewhere, and Greg Sankey's smart. He knows what he's doing in this conference. You've seen what he's done, so they don't need it, and I don't think they will add unless the number is sky high, out of control. Speaking of numbers and money and situations and decisions, Boston's got one. Let me rephrase that. Boston doesn't have one. They've got a situation. They don't have a decision. When I'm talking about Rafael Devers. As I'm sure you might have seen his comments the other day, he come out and said he would not play first base when asked when Craig Breslow, the GM, asked him. Reason he was asked him to play first base is because of their injury for Tristan Casa. And there's so much wrong on both ends of this situation in Boston. I mean, let's just go back to the offseason, okay? First, let's go back to the offseason. He didn't want to move off third base. He's a third baseman. He didn't want to stop playing third base. When there were talks to sign Alex Bregman or go get Nolan Arenado. Bregman was going to move to second base or play the outfield. Nolan Arenado was going to play third base regardless. The problem with this is you want to put your best team on the field. Bregman and Nolan Arenado, both way better defenders than Rafael Devers, who was one of the worst fielding third baseman in the league. So they said there's a fight there, but they said, Devers, you don't need a glove. You're full-time DH, and that's what you're going to do. He followed it, but he's like, okay, here we are. Full-time DH, guy can hit, guy can rate. No, there's no denying that. But also, too, you got to remember, Devers is in year 2 of a 10-year, $313 million deal with Boston. He's your franchise cornerstones, so he's not going anywhere. But these antics, it makes me question, does he really want to win? Does he want to be a baseball player? Does he want to help his team compete for a title? Because remember, not the plan. No plan was it for him to move to first base. But it also wasn't the plan for Tristan Casas to have a season-ending injury. I don't think that was the plan either, was it? If you ask him, you ask Tristan, it wasn't the plan to get injured. Devers said, go out and get a first baseman. I'll stay the DH. Remember, you're a competing team. You're trying to win a title, right? Well, every other team that's trying to win a title isn't trading their first baseman. Good quality first baseman, you're not getting that. It's way easier to find a hitter, a DH type player than his first baseman. It gives you so many more options. You can go get an outfielder. Maybe you go get another third baseman. There's been numerous players that have said, yeah, I know I'm the franchise cornerstone, but I'll move off X position for the team because know what? It makes us better, makes the team better. Aaron Judge moved to center field for a short period of time. For what? Year and a half, 2 years, I think? Bryce Harper said, I'll move to first base because there's a hole there and it makes us better. Year 2 for Bryce Harper. I still am curious to see if he stays at first base long term. Yes, some of it was because the injury coming off Tommy John. But still, they locked Bryce Harper up to that $300 million plus contract. If he said he wanted to play right field or move him to left field because of the arm, they would have, because it's Bryce Harper. He's there for 13 years. Freddie Freeman, when he was in Atlanta, moved to third base for a couple of weeks, never played the position much because of how well journeyman Matt Adams was playing. Journeyman Matt Adams. First baseman, his position was first base or DH, really. And that's when there really wasn't it. At that point, there wasn't a DH in the National League. Braves had a hole, some injuries at third base. Freddie Freeman said, I'll go play third base for a little bit. Now, granted, he moved back to first later that year. But yeah, I'll play third base. I want to win. A couple more examples. Hall of Famer Chipper Jones moved to left field for 2 years for Vinny Castilla. Solid big leaguer, Vinny Castilla, franchise player. If Chipper said, no, I'm not moving to left field, it's, hey, Vinny, do you want to move to left? We're interested. Would you be willing to move to left field because Chipper Jones is at, or they wouldn't have signed Vinny Castilla and they would have tried to potentially gone somewhere else in left field because Chipper wasn't moving off third base. This year, we've seen again Jose Altuve, Hall of Fame track second baseman. moved to left field for a nobody. No offense to Brandon Rogers and Marcus Dubon, who's kind of bounced all over. Second baseman. Jose Altuve moved, but yet you didn't get one of those two players to move to left field. Jose said, I'll do it. I'll move to left field. Cornerstone second baseman, your franchise guy, the only guy left from the bad teams to the good teams. Bregman's not there. Carlos Correa's not there. You traded Kyle Tucker. He's no longer there. Jose Altuve saw your down years and you won your good years and you won championships. He moved to left field. This is hard for me to understand in Rafael Devers' position. I mean, he can hit, so that, that helps, obviously. That's why they got him. That's why they locked him up. That's why he's still there. He can hit. But don't you want to be more valuable? And in the future, don't you want him to be an easier piece to build around where he can play, even if it is an average or an okay first base? That's a nice skill to have, because what if Bregman opts out of his contract, and if he keeps hitting like he has all year, he probably will. Now, he might stay and re-up in Boston, or he might go get, somewhere else. But Bregman can opt out after this year. Don't you, Rafael Devers, want to stay in more baseball shape, more flow, and play first? You're not a sharp fielder as it is, but it's only going to deteriorate even more if you don't play any infield this year, even if it's at first as opposed to third. Then you're at this point, you're limited to DH pretty much at this point, if for the rest of your career. Which, I mean, okay, they're paying you to hit and produce offensively, but do you really want to play third? I don't know. You said you want to play third. Do you really want to play third? You're not going anywhere, but there's a lot of questions. It's not a good look to be the cornerstone guy in Boston. We'll see how this all turns out if he eventually reverses course and says, "No, what? I will play third. I will play first." As anytime I see this, I always think of Moneyball in the Juan Washington situation with Billy Bean. Hey, Wash, tell Heidelberg how easy it is to play first base. Wash, tell him. It's incredibly difficult, Wash says. Always makes you laugh. Yes, you can't just put anybody there. There is footwork. Yes, all that stuff matters. But come on, Devers. It's not a good look, but we'll see how it plays out in the next week or month or so. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at LockItUpMedia. That's LockItUpMedia on Twitter. You can also check us out on E5280 Sports. I'm Locke Hoover. You've been listening to Lock It Down Sports. Talk to you next week.